Hey, how's it going, guys? DJ Siddiqi here of RG Media. You guys obviously already know me from all of the interviews that I do over at RG Media, whether that's NFL related, NBA related, MLB related, NHL related. But for this show over here, we're going to be releasing weekly episodes where we're going to be discussing some of the biggest NFL topics in that given week. So I'm glad to welcome you guys to the first ever show that we're doing. Obviously, follow our YouTube channel at the RG Media 1 for weekly episodes. This time around, we're going to be discussing the New Orleans Saints and their quarterback situation. Obviously, as everyone knows, Derek Carr was dealing with a shoulder injury. We knew about this leading into the draft. The Saints, they didn't quite go and address that need in the first round, but they did do it in the second round with a 40th overall pick in Tyler Shaw, a 25-year-old with a big arm, a cannon for an arm. But with that being said, Derek Carr officially retired. The news was announced this past weekend. So the question is, okay, what are the Saints going to do moving forward? As things currently stand right now, they have three very inexperienced quarterbacks. Like we said, Tyler Shaw, the rookie quarterback. They also have Spencer Rattler, who started a few games last year but didn't win a single game. And then they have third-year quarterback Jake Haener, who's also very limited experience-wise and also doesn't have a single win to his name. So you look at the New Orleans Saints, they're a team that has a veteran-packed roster, a lot of, obviously, skill across the board, especially on offense with Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Brandon Cooks, and then they have a few defensive veterans, longtime defensive veterans such as Demario Davis and Cameron Jordan. The question is, what do the Saints do? Do they stick with their inexperienced group of quarterbacks, go with Tyler Shaw, who would be the favorite right now to start at quarterback, or do they pick up a veteran? There's a few options, obviously. There's been a few options mentioned for the Saints, either through trade or free agency. A few of the names through trade: Jameis Winston, who previously served as the Saints' starting quarterback and was the backup to Drew Brees for a short period of time. Also other names such as Kenny Pickett, Kirk Cousins, and the biggest name of them all, this would be through free agency, Aaron Rodgers. Long story short, when you look at this Saints team, obviously last year was a rough go of things, but people forget when Carr was in the lineup, a veteran quarterback, a solid veteran quarterback, not great, solid. They were 5-5 with Carr in the lineup. The previous year, they went 9-8. 9-8. So they had the same record as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in 2023. Buccaneers ended up winning the division on a tiebreaker. But this is what I'm trying to say. The Saints have been a fringe playoff team for the past few years. They clearly have the talent on the roster. Obviously, they've struggled in the post-Drew Brees era, whereas during the Brees era, they were making it to the playoffs every year as a number 1 or number 2 seed, but now they've struggled to make it to the playoffs. They haven't made it to the playoffs a single time since Brees retired after the 2020 season. If the Saints are smart about what to do moving forward, they should replace Carr with a veteran quarterback. And I'm not talking about Kenny Pickett just because there's familiarity there with Kellen Moore, because Kellen Moore was the offensive coordinator of the Eagles last season when Kenny Pickett was the backup. Obviously, Kellen Moore is the head coach right now for the Saints. I'm not talking about Jameis Winston, who has proven to be erratic throughout his career, even though he's a lot better at taking care of the ball now. He's still an erratic quarterback. And I'm not talking about Kirk Cousins, who threw so many fourth quarter interceptions last year and lost the Falcons several games, which is the reason why he was benched for Michael Penix in December when the Falcons were still in the playoff hunt. If you want a logical answer and the quarterback who gives you the best opportunity to win right now, that would be Aaron Rodgers. I know he's an enigma. I know a lot of people are divided on him. I know a lot of people don't like maybe his personality, how he may come across. The reality is Aaron Rodgers is still a quality quarterback. Is he the MVP quarterback that he was just a few years prior? Probably not, but he doesn't need to be. When you look at Aaron Rodgers right now, his options are very limited. The only option really is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they're getting weaker and weaker with what feels like each passing week. Obviously, they just traded George Pickens. Yeah, DK Metcalf is still there, but this looks to be the weakest roster for the Steelers in the Mike Tomlin era. If Rodgers goes over there, sure, he's playing for one of the best coaches in the league in Mike Tomlin. Tomlin's never had a losing record. They'll be threatening for a playoff spot, possibly. They'll be a respectable team, but there's no guarantee that they'll make it to the playoffs. You look at the AFC North. This is arguably the toughest division in football. You're looking at a Cincinnati Bengals team who should have been in the playoffs last year, was the hottest team in December, the hottest team at the end of the regular season. You look at the Baltimore Ravens with two-time MVP Lamar Jackson. They're always threatening for a Super Bowl. It's going to be hard just to compete in that division and just to make it into the playoffs. Logically, for Rodgers, it would make sense to go to the Saints where that division is so weak, man. It's so weak. Yeah, the Carolina Panthers are getting a little bit better. Yeah, Bryce Young showed some hope last year as a franchise quarterback. But does anybody realistically see them as a playoff team this year? Hell no. Absolutely not. The Atlanta Falcons, okay, they're a solid team. They're an okay team. They're in the same tier as the Saints and the Buccaneers. The Buccaneers, yeah, hey, they've made it to the playoffs the past several years. Obviously, they've made it both years under Baker Mayfield. But this is a team that's barely winning the division and barely squeaking into the playoffs. They barely did it over the Falcons last year. They barely did it over the Saints 2 years ago. Okay? Aaron Rodgers goes over to the Saints. That could very realistically be your division champs in the NFC South this upcoming season. Like I said before, the New Orleans Saints, this is not a garbage team. This is not a rebuilding roster like when you look at a team such as the Cleveland Browns or, the New York Giants, where it's clear that they're not going to win many games this season. The Saints, they're going to be threatening. With a formidable quarterback, they can finish with anywhere from 8 to 10 wins this season, especially playing in the division that they play in. So I know a lot of people are throwing out these ideas, these possible options for the Saints. And the only logical option, if the Saints are looking to contend this season, and it's only fair to these veterans who have been there for so long. Cameron Jordan's been there since 2011. DeMario Davis since 2018. Okay? And these guys have been through 4 consecutive years of losing, of not making it into the playoffs, and coming up just short. So the reality is this. If the Saints are looking to contend, if they're looking to make it into the playoffs this year, sign Aaron Rodgers. It's a logical choice. And for Aaron, the only logical choice is the Saints. He can keep waiting all he wants for this Minnesota Vikings gig. I don't know if he wants to end his career exactly the way that Brett Favre did. His former mentor, the guy he formerly backed up in Green Bay for a few years. But the reality is they're committed to J.J. McCarthy. And unless J.J. McCarthy suffers an injury, they're not going to sign Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so Aaron, if you want to end your career on a respectable note, okay, because last year with the Jets, you played well, okay, but that team obviously was garbage. You don't want your career to go out with a whimper like that. You want it to end with a decent amount of respect. You want to at least contend for a playoff spot, probably go to the playoffs, maybe even win a playoff game. And if you go to New Orleans, that's a possibility. That's a realistic possibility. You're arguably the favorites to win the division. If you sign with the New Orleans Saints, you're very much up there with the likes of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. So the solution, long story short, the solution to the Saints is a quarterback dilemma. With Derek Carr retired and out of the equation, it's simple. Sign Aaron Rodgers. Now, shifting gears away from the Aaron Rodgers, New Orleans Saints, possible combination, possible signing, I want to talk about another quarterback situation in Seattle with Sam Darnold, their new signing. I actually had the opportunity to speak to Sam recently. Great guy, by the way. Second time I've spoken in depth with him. The first time was over at the Pro Bowl in Orlando. He's a genuinely good guy, very hard worker. I can see why teammates rally around him, especially given what he's gone through. You know, things weren't exactly easy for him to start his career as a top pick with the New York Jets, playing under those bright lights and the toughest media in the United States, and obviously he wasn't surrounded by a great team. Obviously, he's bounced around from team to team, several teams. He's played for the Niners. He's played for the Carolina Panthers. Finally, he found his footing last year as the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, led them to the second best record in the NFL at 14-3. So obviously, new beginnings for Sam Darnold this year in Seattle. And you know, it's funny looking at the Seahawks because they're one of those teams where even though they've been a winning team over the past 3 years, they've been a winning team over the past 3 years with Geno Smith at quarterback, made it to the playoffs one of those years, but people are not high on them this year. Actually, it's kind of funny when you look at the over-under win totals for the NFC West teams this year. Seattle is pegged at the lowest at 7.5. That's not a lie. That's not an exaggeration. The Cardinals are pegged at a higher over-under win total at 8.5. So expectations are low for the Seahawks this year. Obviously, I know that they've kind of reloaded the roster a little bit. Obviously, DK Metcalf is no longer a member of the team. They traded him over to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, longtime receiver Tyler Lockett is not there anymore. So the roster looks a little bit different, but heck, this is still a team that went 10-7 last year. They missed the playoffs actually on a tiebreaker to the Rams, who finished with the same record as the Seahawks. Actually, 2 years ago, the Seahawks also missed the playoffs on a tiebreaker with the wild card Green Bay Packers at 9-8. So this is a team that's right there banging at the door with a young, hungry head coach and Mike Macdonald, a solid defense. And the one issue really has been, over the past couple of years, has been the lack of offense. Obviously, Geno Smith revived his career in Seattle. He went to the Pro Bowl a couple times. Had some notable moments there, led them to the playoffs, obviously. But with that being said, if you really look into the statistics, you delve deep into the statistics, especially over the past couple of years, Geno's been a pretty average quarterback. That's not an exaggeration. He's literally been an average quarterback. I have the statistics right here. He actually finished 19th in passer rating last year with a 93.2 passer rating. The league average was 92.5. Back in 2023, Geno finished with a passer rating ranked 17th. A 92.1 passer rating. The league average, 89 in 2023. So, it's not surprising to see that the Seahawks, that they matched Geno's play. Now, this is not all Geno's fault, but the Seahawks finished 17th in points in 2023 and then 18th in points last year. Points per game. That's right around the mark where Geno Smith finished in terms of passer rating. Okay, so I know people are kind of down on Darnold. They forget, the first 15 or 16 games he had last season, which were really damn good. They only remember the last two games where obviously it was a dud against the Detroit Lions in a big game. It was a dud in the wild card playoff game against the Los Angeles Rams, a game the Vikings were favored in. But here's the reality. Darnold is an upgrade over Geno. Okay? And unlike Geno, Darnold is just hitting his peak at 27, 28 years old. Geno obviously came out from nowhere, had an amazing year at the age of 32, and obviously now he's 34, 35 years old. But the Seahawks saw it. Everybody should have been able to see it. Geno reached a peak. He hit a plateau. This is what you're going to get. Best case scenario, contending for a playoff spot, maybe sneak in, lose the first playoff game. With Sam Darnold, you actually have a shot. And yes, it's not an easy division. Like I was saying before with the New Orleans Saints and the NFC South, which is one of the weakest divisions in football, this is a pretty tough division. Obviously, the Rams, they're getting better and better with their reloaded core, mixed in with, obviously, veteran head coach Sean McVay and veteran quarterback Matthew Stafford. They just have a lot of new pieces now that they've built in the roster through the draft over the past few years since their Super Bowl team. Niners, obviously, they should be back to contention form. Assuming that they're not banged up. They were the most injured team in the NFL last season. And the Cardinals, who knows what we're going to see with them. But yeah, it's a tough division. But the reality is the Seahawks with Sam Darnold, they should be a very formidable team. They should be a fringe playoff team. And if anything, they should probably be a better team than they were last year. There's a renewed emphasis on offense, obviously, understandably so, because that is what has held them back over the past couple of years. 9 of their 11 draft picks were offensive players. So, as I said before, spoke to Sam, recently. Like I said, great guy. He tackled a number of different topics. Has talked about playing with Cooper Kupp. That's their obviously their new addition and replacing DK Metcalf. Obviously, coming over to play for offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak, which was a big draw. According to Sam, Clint, for those who don't know, was the offensive coordinator of the Niners when Sam was the backup quarterback to Brock Purdy in San Francisco a couple of years ago. So there's a lot of familiarity there. And he also talks about Jalen Milroe, obviously, the third-round draft pick who he'll be mentoring. But I love, Sam's analysis and outlook on this situation where he even mentioned that he could probably learn a thing or two from Jalen Milroe. It doesn't matter that Jalen's a young guy and a rookie quarterback. He could learn a thing or two from Jalen also. So he's really looking forward to teaming up with Jalen Milroe. Obviously, they have the same quarterback coach. He watched him from afar, watching Milroe tear it up at Alabama, scoring 20 rushing touchdowns last season. So it'll be interesting to see how things play out over there. And then we also tackled the topic of, I asked Sam, are you looking to replicate the success that you had from last season in Minnesota, where he tore up the league? Finished top 5 in several major passing categories. And I loved Sam's outlook and Sam's answer on that question, where he's not necessarily concerned about the stats, the individual objectives. He's just looking to get better each and every day and looking to be the best version of himself while also getting to know his teammates and obviously looking to win. So I want you guys to check out some snippets from my interview with Sam, a very good one. Check it out right here.
What's up, DJ? I'm good, man. It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. I was going to tackle some Seahawks-related topics. Obviously, that was one of the biggest moves of the offseason. You signing with Seattle. What led you to signing with the Seahawks? What was a big selling point? I'm hearing Clint Kubiak obviously was a big selling point. Can you kind of detail that?
Yeah. Clint, obviously a blue collar man. Just like I talked about, he's very easygoing. I was with him obviously in 2023 with the Niners. It's a system that I'm pretty aware of. I have some experience in it a couple years ago. And so that was obviously a draw. And then when I saw the Geno trade go down, I think that was kind of like, okay, like that kind of, I knew that it would be a possibility to be going there. And with the roster that we have, or looking back, the roster that the Seahawks had at the time, I was very excited about it. Still am very excited about it, but it's just, those are the kind of things you look for, at this point in my career. I'm, just ready to win, and it was, looking at the opportunity to come into Seattle and win games. I think that was the biggest thing. And then obviously, Coach McDonald as well, just the kind of culture that he set in Seattle the last year. And the kind of culture we're setting early in this offseason has been really, really good. And we're just going to continue to work. But, I would definitely say after the Geno trade, that's kind of when I realized that Seattle, I had a real opportunity to go there.
Yeah, obviously you're not the only notable star player to join Seattle this offseason. Cooper Kupp also, who's a Washington native. Have you been in close contact with him and thoughts on, teaming up with Cooper Kupp, a Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah, we've been at it here for the last 2 weeks or so, and Coop's been great, man. He's such a hard worker. Obviously, that's um, very well documented, just how hard he works, and I feel like he's always in the quarterback room. If I can't find Cooper in the building, I can always feel like I can go to the quarterback room and find him. But he's just always kind of especially right now, he's got his head in the playbook and trying to learn this as fast as possible because, I think he said it best when we talked a couple weeks ago. But, in regards to learning the offense, like we're behind the eight ball right now. All these teams have quarterbacks and rosters that have been in the same system for 2, 3, 4, plus years. So for us, we just got to, take advantage of every single day, not feel like we're grinding too hard to where we can't focus the next day, but we just got to have a really urgent mindset to be able to make some hay this off season and do what we can to put ourselves in a good position by the start of the season.
Okay, sounds good enough, Sam. One last question from me before we wrap things up. Any concrete objectives for this season?
It's it's interesting, right? I feel like when people ask you about kind of what goals you're setting, and you have long-term goals, you have short-term goals. I stick with that mindset of just continuing to be the best that I can every single day, and I feel like everything will kind of fall into place if I just continue to do that. And I can't be, it's tough because in this business, everything is driven on results. Like, do you get wins and like, do you get wins? Do you throw touchdowns? You're trying not to throw interceptions, like all these things, all these stats that people look at the end of the day, like, you just do everything that you can every day to be the best person, best player you can be. And everything else will kind of just fall into place from there. And that's really how I look at it.
As you can tell, like I said, Sam, great guy, great interview. Always love talking to him. You can just genuinely tell he values your time, gives you great answers, gives you great insight, not those PR type of answers. Gives good analysis, real answers. Like I said before, it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks do this season. But that over-under win total of 7.5, way too low for the Seahawks. I definitely see them being a contender in the NFC West. I definitely see them finishing around the amount of wins that they finished with over the past few years, if not slightly, maybe even finishing slightly better than that, around 9 or 10 wins. They're definitely going to be threatening around that range. But as I said before, it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks fare this season, but they definitely made the right move. And I like Geno Smith, but they had plateaued with him. They made the right move and moving on from Geno into a quarterback in Sam Darnold that they can truly build around, not just for the present, but for the foreseeable future. I know a lot of people think there's a short leash on Sam because of the Jalen Milroe draft selection. But again, remember, Milroe is extremely raw still. He's a very talented quarterback, great dual threat quarterback, but he still has a ways to go before he's a passer, a starting quarterback at the NFL level. With that being said, guys, heck, appreciate the time that you took out listening to the first ever RG Media weekly show that we'll be doing on the NFL. Like I said before, follow us over on YouTube at the RG Media 1. You will see all of our interviews on there. Just released a batch of NFL interviews that should pique your interest. One with Ed McCaffrey, where he talks about his son Christian McCaffrey and his return from injury, and his thoughts on Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, his former team, moving forward. Also have a couple of other interviews. One with Jordy Nelson, where he talks about the Green Bay Packers, their draft selection of Matthew Golden, and how their future looks with Jordan Love at quarterback. Along with Malachi Starks of the Baltimore Ravens, first round draft pick of the Baltimore Ravens, where he talks about looking forward to playing under John Harbaugh and playing with Lamar Jackson. That wraps up the first episode for our weekly show. Catch you guys next week.